I'm Josh Swartz.
And I'm William Illingworth.
Hosts of the High Tech Podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now.
Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others.
Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
The Clark County Public Schools, Virginia, is seeking a superintendent beginning August 1st, 2024. Located in Berryville, Virginia, just south of Winchester, Clark County Public Schools serves 1,924 students in their 4 accredited schools: Boyce and D.G. Cooley Elementary Schools, Johnson Williams Middle School, and a new Clark County High School. The district's manageable size promotes visibility, inclusion, relationships, and transparency. The firm of Hazard, Young, and Attia, HYA, is conducting the search, and leading the search are associates Drs. Sam DePaul and Daryl Williams. They can be reached at samuel.depaul@hyasearch.com and daryl.williams@hyasearch.com. Visit the Clark County Public Schools website at clark.k12.va.us for more information about the district, and also visit HYA's website, hyasearch.com. Hey, welcome back. Steve here, and today I'm talking with Danny Kofke, a financial advisor and former elementary teacher. Our focus today is money management, Mentoro, a financial education company, and his podcast, Run with the Bulls. This is such a cool episode. You're going to learn so much. Thanks for listening. Oh, by the way, before you go, it'd be so cool if you took a moment to help out the podcast. And here are a couple ways you could do that. 1, tell a friend and share the links. 2, go to my website and leave a review and subscribe. Or how about 3, click on the link on my website homepage to buy me a coffee. By doing this, you could donate $1 or $2 to help me address the costs associated with producing the podcasts. What do you think? You're so cool. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the show.
So a lot of people look at it as the B word, but all financial decisions stem from the budget. And if you don't like that word, call it a spending plan. You know, the semantics get to you, whatever. But it stems from that. We have to know, especially if you're making a moderate income and you don't have a lot left over, you have to know how every dollar is being spent. And then you can base it on a big, popular term right now is value-based spending. So you spend based on what your values are.
It's the Education Podcast, your favorite show, with lots of groovy guests and they share what they know. So crank it up to 10 and let your neighbors know that here's another show with Dr. Steve Millett-O. Teaching, learning, leading K12. Teaching, learning, leading K12. Teaching, learning, leading K12. With Dr. Steve Millett-O.
After being an elementary school teacher for 18 years, Danny Kofke recently left the classroom to work with Mentoro, a financial education company. His love of teaching and personal finance led him to write 5 personal finance books, including The Wealthy Teacher, Lessons for Prospering on a School Teacher's Salary, which is a cool, not only title, but has some great stuff in it. Danny's everyday approach to handling money has led him to appear on numerous television shows, including Fox and Friends, the CBS Early Show, CNN's Newsroom, the 700 Club, and the Clark Howard Show. He has also been interviewed on over 600 radio shows and featured in a number of publications, including USA Today, Yahoo.com, The Wall Street Journal, Money Magazine, and the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. He wants to show others if this former school teacher can do well financially, they can too. Our focus today is money management, Mentoro, and the podcast Run with the Bulls. Danny, thanks so much for being on the show again. Say hi to everyone.
Yeah, hey everyone, and excited to be back on, and looking forward to this, Steve.
Well, Danny, it's cool to have you back on, and last time we talked was on episode 331 in September 2020, which... Wow. Ooh, some things happened that year.
Times are a little different now, right?
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. And and just as a note, by the way, I'm at episode 678 or 77, something like that. So, so that's interesting how the time passes too. So I'm glad you're here. So since we first connected, you've been focused on helping others with financial advice. Where'd that idea come from? Why'd you start doing that? Because you were a teacher there for a little bit.
Sure. Well, even during my teaching career, I mean, and I look back now, this journey started way back in 2005, I guess. That time we just had one daughter, Ava, who was on your show a number of years ago.
Very much so.
So, I mean, she was little then. She's just finished her sophomore year at UGA. So once again, time flies for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Ava was born like she was a year old. I was a first grade teacher. Tracy, my wife, was a teacher and then stayed at home when Ava was born. And I don't know, just this idea struck me of like, hey, I should share my words with others. And colleagues had said, gosh, you guys, how are you able to stay home? You should write a book. Knew nothing about the process. Publishing industry was completely different then. So just got my words down on paper, and then I found a publisher. But at that time, I had to pay, and at that time it was like $4,000 we had to pay to have that book. There's a way to earn money back and things. So we prayed about it, talked about it. Once again, living on 42 grand a year at that time, it was a big decision, but we decided to take that risk. And yeah, that started it all. That one book led to 4 other books, led to the media things, numerous jobs helping others manage money. But I think it just stemmed from, me growing up. We lived in a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house, my brother, myself, my mom and dad. And I think about that, 1 bathroom up until I was in 6th grade. But we always felt like we had enough. And I think that's where it stemmed for me of looking at it. And we're, especially now with the social media being what it is, it's like it's this cycle of we want more, we want more, and want more. But yet when we look around at today's times, most people are unhappy. They're a lot unhappier than they were when I was growing up. So it just kind of shows me that having more doesn't really equal happiness. So I think, for me, it's just that different type of financial approach. And I try to tell people, I personally believe that money leads to experience and opportunities. Like we just got back. My mom is a big LA Dodger fan, and we actually went out to LA last weekend. My brother met us out there, watched a Braves Dodger game, got to watch 2 of them. And that took money to do. But yet that experience is something that will last forever. And that's kind of the way I view money, that yeah, it's nice to have a big house, nice car, whatever. Those things come and go. But the memories that we create and the opportunities we create for ourselves, those are the things that are everlasting. So I think, for me, that's where my financial advice comes from, is I just see a lot of people are very unhappy in life, even though they could make a lot of money. So just showing them a different way, I guess, of like, hey, why are you working so hard? What really matters? Kind of getting to that root cause.
Hey, that's awesome. And I'll forgive you about going to see the Dodgers. That's
It was the Braves, though, so I'm a Braves fan. So at least I got to see the Braves in LA. So I stuck true.
Okay, stuck with the Braves. That's good. That's good. Yeah. So we've got, and I think that's so important because part of what you talk about is you talk about managing their money, and I just heard you say that, and I think that's one of the things that it doesn't kind of come with the territory when you are an educator, because a lot of times we're all about just trying to help others. And sometimes what happens is that we don't really focus on ourselves and what we're bringing in. So can you talk a little bit about that idea of what that really means to manage your money?
Sure. Well, once again, and this is where most people go wrong, is you first have to have a plan in place. Like, what do you want your money to do for you? And I know we'll get into where I'm doing now with Mentoro, but that's what we do a lot at Mentoro as well. It's a big step of like, what are your goals with money? Most of us, we end up paying ourselves last. We pay everyone else first at the end of the month, may have nothing left over. So then we don't get to pay ourselves and do things what we want to do with our money. So that to me is the biggest key is to managing money, is like, what are your goals for your money? What do you want to accomplish with it? Because most of us have a set income coming in. I mean, we're not Jeff Bezos and we're so bored we have to build a rocket ship to fly to outer space. That would be nice. But most of us, we're not in that position. So we do have to have that plan in place of, hey, what do I want my limited income? Most of us have a limited income. What do I want it to do for me? And I think that's the first step in managing money, is knowing your why. What is important to you? And then the rest of your financial decisions can kind of be based on, hey, this is the most important thing.
I love it. With that goes this, and I'm going to get into some of this a little bit later too, but, because the idea of kind of keeping up with the Joneses kind of sticks in there, or Smiths, or whatever you want to, whichever term you want to use. But yeah, there you go. You've written several books on financial advice. One of which I've mentioned. It's called "The Wealthy Teacher: Lessons for Prospering on a School Teacher's Salary." By writing these books, is there something that you learned that helps you help others?
Yes. And I think for me, over the course of my career of helping others, and it's kind of like being in the classroom, you learn as you go along of like what resonates with people. And I used to be more of I'd say black and white approach, more like, and I like Dave Ramsey. I think Dave Ramsey's great, but his approach doesn't work for everyone because most of us, we're humans. We're not AI created objects. So the emotions, and honestly, I think money, problems are about 80-90% behavior. So it's pretty easy to do well with money, spend less than you earn. I mean, very, very simple. but yet most of us live paycheck to paycheck, have all these things going on. So, for me, I think I've grown over time is like, we got to tap into the behavior part of it. So why are you making the mistakes? And most of us, it could stem back to childhood. It could stem from a certain event in life that we spend money the way we do because we have these notions, we have these thoughts in our mind that may be false, but we have to unravel those before we can handle our money correctly.
That's awesome. And, and I got to tell you, it's great advice. So we'll make sure at the end that they can link to where they can find your books because it's good stuff. One of the things I want to bring out is that you mentioned just a little bit ago, is that you work for a company named Mentoro. Could you share a little bit about this company and its mission?
Sure. So it's wonderful. I'm so excited to get started with them. It's just a perfect fit of, once again, we go back where with Mentoro, our primary mission is to empower others to do better with money. And we place a big, huge emphasis on behavioral finance because we've realized that is what most people struggle with. So, with our company, we have a cool, and I'll encourage everyone, you can go sign up for a free trial, mymentoro.com, very easy to sign up. But we have bite-sized learning courses. Once again, we'll get into, we have a podcast, we have a wallet feature, which has, you can aggregate bank accounts to see exactly how you're spending your money, creating a budget, meet with a personal finance mentor to help you with all your needs. So just a slew of things. But yeah, definitely right up my avenue of what I felt is what people need. Most financial education companies, they're more of that checkbox, one size fits all. HR manager says, oh, this would be great for my people. And then here it's on them. And and most people, you look at it one time and you don't go back because that's just the way we work as a society. So, Mentoro, we take a different approach where we walk hand in hand with people. We want to see you through all of your financial goals because let's face it, in our lives, we have different financial factors, what's most important to us at different stages. You've been there, I've been there. 20 years ago, we had just had Ava, so it was like, hey, how are we going to live on one salary? Now, well, I have one in college, another one going to be in college a couple of years. So my life goals have changed. Like, hey, how can I help them graduate debt-free? So that's what the beauty of Mentoro is. Like, we focus on where you are as an individual and help you navigate those life challenges of where you are and where you're going to be.
All right, Danny. So you're the co-host of a podcast called Run with the Bulls. What's your focus?
So once again, kind of going back to the heart of what we do at Mentoro, we try to take a lighter approach to finance. And you and I were talking before the show, finance issues can be very serious. I'm not saying that at all. Most of us know that. Our money dictates what we're going to be able to do in life, basically. But I think a lot of people become scared. People don't want to be, put on that guilt trip and made feel bad about those financial decisions that they've made. Most of us know we're messing up if we do bad with money. Very similar to a diet and health. We know we shouldn't go to Krispy Kreme, but yet some of us do, right? We don't want to beat you up about like, hey, you did this. No, it's about let's learn from these mistakes and move forward. And then with the podcast, we try to take a lighthearted, fun approach to managing money. We look at various different topics. We had an episode recently about influencers, and it interests me. This guy flew his plane and crashed into a mountain and filmed it, and he knew he was going to make more on social media than it would cost to replace an airplane. So just like interesting topics like that we feel resonate with people, but then also just give some sound financial advice. Once again, without the guilt trips of, hey, we're not going to beat you up because like I said, most of us know how to do well with money. It's just the behavior, and we have to want to be able to do well. So just kind of more of a lighthearted look at finance because it can be so serious. And, most people, they don't want to be lectured. They don't want to be told how they've screwed up in their lives and what they've done. So just kind of hopefully to motivate them and get others to want to learn a little bit more and show them that they can take control of their money. They can do well financially. And, it just starts one step at a time. So not to try to tackle it all at one time, but just, lighthearted look and to hopefully inspire others.
One of the things I like about your podcast is that it does have that lightheartedness. You're talking about serious topics, but they're topics that people want to know about. And as opposed to a lot of times I listen to some financial podcasts, they go right over my head or they make my eyes glaze or roll back, at some point, I have to wipe the drool off.
Right.
Anyway, yours is not that way. I'm a subscriber. I love the talks. And one of my favorite episodes is the episode titled The Battle of the Sexes. Could you share a sneak peek about this talk?
Right. That one. So this is once again getting into the behavior part of it. So once again, women and men, shockingly enough, have different views when it comes to money. Surprising. So we kind of took a look at that and, like how women compare to men, their shopping habits, or what's important to them. And I think that goes back down to, okay, so if you're having relationship issues with your spouse when it comes to money, there are reasons why. There are notions that we have in our heads before we get married a lot of times that we bring into our marriages or our partnerships with someone, and they drive our financial decisions. So we kind of have to peel back the layers a little bit and see, because if we don't jump into that, it's going to be very difficult to move forward. Even like I go back to Tracy, my wife, and I. When we first got married, she definitely was more materialistic than I was. But then I peeled it back and I see why. I grew up where she had a grandmother that her grandmother valued very materialistic things, whereas my parents and my grandmother, they could care less. But yet they had more money than her grandmother had. So just an interesting thing, but it just shows I had to peel that back a little bit. We had to talk about it of like, hey, what's important? And, to her grandmother, it was important to have showy, nice things. Okay, so be it. That's fine. But you just have to agree on it as a couple, because if you don't, you're going to be going in opposite directions when you should be working together.
That's so important. And I think listening to that episode, it really makes you think about those aspects. I mean, when you make a couple, one of the things you're going to have to do is decide how this works, because, we do have our, like you talked about, maybe one of them wants to go to baseball games and the other one, not so much. And, maybe there's expenditures on, I don't know, you might know somebody who likes to buy record albums, like me,
Sure. Right.
And the other side, not so much, and they have a different focus on it. And I have a friend who, his hobby is very expensive old cars, and so it's just so important to recognize that there are those, we have those differences in how we look at money and such. And I think that's a great episode.
Well, thank you.
Let's talk about a couple of questions about money management for a minute. What do you think is one of the main hindrances for educators being good stewards of their finances?
Unfortunately for teachers, I think we've been taught that if you teach, you're going to be poor, right? It's a vow of poverty when you become a teacher. That has changed now. Governor Kemp just did another raise for teachers. I think the starting salary now in Georgia, it's either getting close to about 50 grand a year or, near that point. And I think that's what we've been fooled as educators of like, hey, I can't do well. And the thing is, you can. Granted, and we talk to people, especially those beginning brand new teachers that, you start off as a teacher, your friends that you graduated college with are probably going to start off making more than you. That's just the way it is. But as an educator, you have to look at the overall benefits package of, and here's a big one for teachers, the pension. The way the pension system, especially here in Georgia, the way it works, you work 30 years, it's like you can retire a millionaire based on how much you're going to get from TRS every single year. So I think you just have to take an overall look at that. But I think we've been fooled, once again, as educators of like, hey, you're not going to have much, you're not going to make much, you're going to struggle. It's just changing that mindset a little bit. And, most of us, you've been there as a teacher, we all say and I had Tracy, my wife, was a teacher as well. We're never going to have our kids become teachers. Well, it turns out now Ava, the oldest, she changed her major to education. But, years ago, I'd be like, no, don't do that. But then when you look at the overall way of a teacher, like once again, your salary is usually starting off over 50 grand a year. The health insurance benefits are a lot better than a lot of other companies. The pension system, there's a lot of perks to it. So I think instead of looking at just the salary alone as an educator, we have to say, you know what, we may start off lower than some others, but we do have a good salary. We have opportunities to earn extra money with some of the time off that we have or tutoring, whatever it may be. But I think just that mindset shift of, hey, we can do well financially. And even if we're not making a large salary, say, to start with, if we make proper decisions, we have a plan in place, and we start from the beginning to live on less than we earn, we can do well financially.
Awesome. Love that advice. All right, let's talk about this. What advice would you give somebody about where and when to begin being a better manager of their money? You just said just a second ago, maybe we haven't done so well. What do you think? What should you tell them?
There's that old proverb, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, the next best time is today. So I think there's no better time to start than now. And we call it, here at Mentoro, we call it the B word, the budget, right? The other B word, I guess. So a lot of people look at it as the B word, but all financial decisions stem from the budget. And if you don't like that word, call it a spending plan. The semantics get to you, whatever. But it stems from that. We have to know, especially if you're making a moderate income and you don't have a lot left over, you have to know how every dollar is being spent. And then you can base it on a big, popular term right now is value-based spending. So you spend based on what your values are. And, there was a book, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, The Automatic Millionaire. They talked about the latte factor, whereas instead of buying the latte from Starbucks at $4 a day, if you invested that, you would have whatever, $200,000 in retirement. But for some people, that latte brings enjoyment and they need that for their day. But if that's the case for you, then maybe you don't eat lunch out or you don't eat dinner out or whatever it may be, but it stems all the way back to the budget. You have to know how you're spending your money. Then you can analyze hey, I didn't use that for 3 months. I can cut it out. Even with me, I don't always practice what I preach, but analyzing the budget a couple months ago, and I saw that we had Audible. I have no idea when we signed up for Audible. I don't use Audible. Tracy doesn't use Audible. That was $15 a month. So we canceled it. So that's the thing. I mean, $15 a month doesn't sound like much, but what? That's like $185, $180 a year. So that's where you just have to be mindful of exactly how you're spending your money. And, little things do add up, but also at the same time, we have to be mindful of those bigger purchases as well, where a lot of people, I think the average car payment now, new car payment is over $700 a month. So we have to know how that's being spent. And then once we can see, okay, here's where my money's going, then we can make the necessary cutbacks to live the life that's important to us.
That's so important. And, you've mentioned a couple of things that you can suddenly not realize where your money's going, especially when you think about the apps for TV. Cut the cord, but now you're paying just an insane amount where it sounds good in the beginning when it was $7, but then suddenly it's up to 14, it's 15, whatever.
Right. Well, that's why those subscription-based models are so wonderful for the companies, because most of us will not opt out. And there was a study and this is kind of taking the reverse of with a lot of teacher retirement system plans, where now a lot of the big emphasis is auto enroll, because human behavior is most of us aren't going to do the work to opt out of something. So at your school district, if you're automatically enrolled, or your workplace, you're automatically enrolled into your supplemental retirement savings plan, guess what? You're probably going to stick with it instead of getting a form, checking the thing to opt out. So we kind of have to use the reverse psychology when it comes to saving money. Auto enroll into a savings account or retirement account every single month, because then you're kind of, human nature, you're probably not going to opt out of that. But then, yes, look at all those subscription based. Now we have, Hulu Plus and Amazon and Spotify and Pandora. All these things. And those companies know once they get us that one time, I would venture to say 90% of us will not opt out, because we don't look at it of where our money's going. So yeah, very important to analyze that budget, kind of like a tooth and comb, and just see, okay, exactly where everything's going.
Yeah, it's so important. And without going into names, I know that I think it's funny that now there's apps that you can get involved with that look for where you've spent money that you're not using.
Yes.
Oh, that was hilarious. So let's talk about retirement, because, a long time ago, I was a brand new teacher, and I'll never forget sitting in this big auditorium, and someone stood on a stage, and there were a lot of people in this auditorium. This was a big system, and they started talking to us about something that my brain was going yada 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 yada, but they were using the word retirement. And you have an episode of the show that's called "The Myths About Retirement." Could you share one or two of these myths?
Sure, I'll share a couple. So one of the myths that we talked about was, and this is big for teachers, I will start saving for retirement in a few years when I make more, right? Most of us start off here, and then over time, we're going to go up here. But there's a little thing called lifestyle creep that happens to many of us, and that's where we live up to how much we earn. So it's really, really important to start, when you first have your first real job, fill out all those papers from HR, start investing, saving something. And it could be $50 a month, whatever it could be, but you want to start the habit. That's the important part, is you're starting already to live on less than you earn and starting that habit. And for many teachers and others in other workplaces, I usually recommend saving a percentage. Why? Well, then every year you get a raise, hopefully you get a raise, then you're automatically going to increase how much you're investing for retirement as well at the same time, because it's based on that percentage. So that was one of the myths. Another one was, and this is a big one, and teachers, we're lucky we still have it, but my company will take care of me in retirement. So the number of pension plans has declined by more than 70% since the mid 80s. So it used to be companies, you worked there 30 years, got the gold watch, they sent you off with a nice pension. Well, they realized how much it cost them. So now most companies, especially in the private sector, they do the 401k plan. And a lot of them will match. So I will say, if you're in that industry, make sure you invest enough to get that company match, because it's free money. If you invest 4%, they match it 4%, you're getting that free 4%. But it is now a big myth that most companies will take care of you. Unless you're in the government, most industries still have some sort of pension. I know teachers here in Georgia do, and in other states and other government places. But in the private place, yeah, we know pensions have long gone. And then final one, and this is probably a big one for most people, the big myth is I will live off Social Security income alone. So right now, the average monthly income from Social Security is about $1,700. And it's crazy, but nearly 1 in 5 Americans don't have any other source of income in retirement except Social Security. So $1,700 a month. I mean, if you're married, that would be what, $3,400 a month. Can you live off of that? I mean, you probably can at that point, and hopefully you don't have a mortgage and things. But is your life going to be what you want it to be? Are you traveling to Paris to see Taylor Swift? Probably not. Well, if you're retired, you may not want to do that anyways. But you're not probably going to travel a lot. You're not going to be able to do those things because we all know, I mean, reading in the headlines, inflation, right? Inflation it goes up. So it costs a lot more now. So that dollar is going to be worth less. So if you're just dependent on Social Security alone, your golden years probably will not be so golden because you're not going to have a lot of extra left over.
So important to know that information. So important to, I guess, take action on that information too. So
exactly. And that's why I said, especially for brand new teachers or brand new people, just get in the habit of starting to save for retirement. That's probably the biggest thing, and let compound interest work its magic for you over the course of time. So you're not depending solely alone on the government. I mean, I tell people, I don't even know at this point in time what our national debt is. It's something like over $30 trillion, right? And to put that in easy terms, if you spent $1 million every single day since the day Jesus was born, you would not have spent $1 trillion.
Wow.
So you think that's so Washington, D.C., I don't care what side you're on, they don't care about you. I mean, you're the most important person when it comes to your retirement savings. So prepare for it. They're not going to rescue you.
Good point. Very good point. And it's just, I have to say this though, that first meeting I had a long time ago in that big auditorium, I was sitting next to somebody, because then the person came out and gave us the tax forms, right? And
yeah.
And I'll never forget that, because I'm like, I was clueless. I'm in my early 20s, and I'm like, I'm not so sure what I should. So I was sitting next to a guy who said, I got this for you. I can help you. And so he gave me some advice, and I filled it out. Boy, did I owe it a lot of money at the end of that year.
See, so he's looking at how much. I'm still clueless when it comes to tax forms. Honestly, I'm like, I just claim zero and hope and don't owe anything. I mean, they make it complicated for a reason.
You're very right. Very right. Danny, we're getting close to finishing up. If someone wanted to follow up and connect with you or learn more, where would you send them?
Sure. Once again, if you go to mymentoro.com, you can sign up. We have a free trial and some free resources on there for you that, you can get started, see what we're all about. Yeah. And just learn more about taking control of your money. Once again, you can sign up to meet with a money mentor. So just all sorts of great things, resources to help others do better.
Awesome. And I'll put that information in the show notes so it's easy for people to find and connect with you guys. I got 2 last questions for you, and they're just some finance ones. Here's the first one. Hear a lot about this stuff. Is it okay to have a debit card, or should you cut them up?
Sure. Debit card, comes out of your bank account. So I'm actually okay with that. There's another personal finance expert out there talking about credit cards, says you should never use a credit card and you should cut them up. And I will say, like, this person talks to probably 20 million people at a time. And when you look at the average amount of people that are in debt that don't pay it off, I can understand you're making a blanket statement because you're appealing to the masses. But for some of us, as long as you pay it off every month, it's okay to use a credit card. I use a credit card. I pay it off every single month, so I'm not paying interest on it. Just use it for gas, things like that. If you're young and you're trying to build your credit score, using a credit card can help. But once again, the key is you have to make sure you actually have the money to pay it off when the bill comes. And, there are people out there, you can use it for rewards. There's some great cash back options. I'm not a big fan of those. Honestly, I mean, I use the cash back for mine, but really, is Visa giving me money because they like me? No. Basically, I'm getting rewards because there's some poor single mother that has 3 kids that's using credit card that's paid. So that's a whole nother rabbit hole. So it's not. So I mean, I don't do it just to build points, but it is an added bonus that you can get some cash back when you do use those cards. But the most important thing is pay it off. You don't want to pay interest, and most cards charge between 18 and 24% interest, a year. So if you're behind, it's almost like it is the opposite of investing. You have compound interest working against you. So it's important to be mindful that, don't buy stuff you can't afford. Basically, if you don't have the money for it, don't buy it.
And so I'm guessing that it's not a really good strategy to use one card to pay off another card.
Well, so here it is. So there are cards, there are strategies that way. Like if you're paying, 18% and you can transfer it to a card that's charging 0% for a set period of time, then yes, that makes sense, because then all the money you pay is going straight towards that principal. So there are strategies, but to me, I would just say that's more complicated to figure out. Just avoid it, and it makes your life a lot simpler.
Love it. Last question. If you go to an amusement park or a professional sports game, for example, we're Braves fans, you might notice some things that you're going to find it difficult, if not impossible, to use cash. An amusement park that's here in Atlanta, once you walk in, there's a little big box, electronic box that looks like a ATM, and you got to go over there and you got to put cash in it, so that you get a little card and then you can use that card.
Same thing as it's at Dodger Stadium. And yeah, it's interesting. It's the complete opposite now, right? Very, very odd.
It's such an interesting world that we're in. What do you think about this direction that we're going now? And how's it going to impact how we manage our money if nobody will use cash, if they don't want? I mean, there's a great commercial right now that the waiter says, "I'm sorry, sir, these nice pictures of former presidents, they're nice and all that, but that's no good here. You can't swipe it."
The times are a-changing. There were studies done, and these were done in the early 2000s, that show you'll spend like 12 to 18% more if you use a card compared to cash. I think McDonald's, they did a study where like their average transaction was $4.50 for cash, $7 for a piece of plastic. So many of us at that point, we had an emotional attachment to the dollar bills, right? We felt, okay. But I look at even like my daughter now, my 19-year-old, I mean, she uses cash occasionally, but they don't use cash. They don't even balance a checkbook. It's all, on an app. So I think that's just the way we're going. So I don't know if especially the younger generation has the same sort of attachment that we did per se to cash. So I don't know if there's, those studies are going to hold true where they're going to overspend. I don't know if that's going to be the case, because they know no different. But I think, for some of us, and that's where it was one of the big popular budgeting methods was the cash envelopes, because once I run out of this, then I can't use it for this category anymore. For instance, if I have $500 for groceries, once I'm out, I can't buy groceries. So I think saying that, I think if we are going to, which I think we probably are down the road, to plastic only, I mean, there'll still be cash, but I think, like you just said, at a lot of places, they're going to be collecting plastic only or accepting plastic. We just have to then, going back to the budget, be really mindful of how we are using that money and keeping detailed. And that's one thing I will say about Mentoro. Once you get in and you create that membership, we have a budget tracker, which it breaks down. It automatically aggregates the bank account, and it automatically shows you right there how you're spending your money. So it takes the guesswork out. So I think, for the future, I think for a great thing for Mentoro, we're in a great spot of being able to show you that, so you don't have to, look at a checkbook register to do that. But I do think then saying that, we have to be really, really mindful, because for most of us, it is pretty simple to insert a card into a chip reader, and there's not a lot of emotion that goes into that compared to years past. I know, for me, and I will say, I guess I'm old, but we have always done it since Tracy and I got married. I guess, 24 years ago, we pull out cash every single month for our discretionary spending. So our entertainment, and we still do that. I go to the ATM beginning of every month and I pull out cash, and that is our spending money for the month. If we want to go out to not the movies, but go out to eat, go out, whatever we're doing, we use cash. And then at the end of the month, if we don't have any cash left, you know what? We're not going to go out to eat tonight because we don't have the cash. So that works well for us. But once again, I don't think it's going to work well for a lot of the people in the younger generation. So I think ultimately we are going to, using the card more. But once again, just kind of going back to the point of, you just have to be very mindful then and know exactly, what you're buying with that card.
Great advice. It is something that's funny because, I am someone who, you look in your wallet and you go, all right, when I take out this $5, how much I got left after that? Oh, I don't think I have that much.
And I'll say I'm usually the only one out of my friends even that are my age that still carries cash. Most of them don't either. So we're just, I guess it's easier not to, honestly. But once again, it's still ingrained in me. So it just helps me keep my spending under control.
Understand. It's interesting. At a recent Braves game, I was there. They started this last year. They have one of these big booths where they have people showing you, but you walk in the gates and it scans your phone and your credit card, and so then when you leave, anything you take with you, it charges to that credit card. And I just think it's like this is talk about not thinking about something, because you don't get the impact of it until like a few weeks later, and you go, why did I pay that for that night? Yeah.
That could be a whole other episode, a rabbit hole we could go down of how the government, but that's a very different show.
Next time on, I like that. That's cool.
That's it.
There we go.
We'll get into it.
Hey, Danny, this has been so much fun. Thanks so much for talking with us about money management, Mentoro, and your podcast, Run with the Bulls. What a cool focus you have. Thanks so much for helping us with our finances. Wishing you the best in all that you do.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on, Steve.
Hey, you have been listening to Teaching Learning Leading K12, a podcast to help you help kids achieve their dreams. Teaching Learning Leading K12 is a member of the Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. Teaching Learning Leading K12 is a member of the podcast network based in Canada called Voice Ed Radio. Voice Ed Radio, your voice is right here. The opinions expressed on Teaching Learning Leading K12 are those of the guests and host. Teaching Learning Leading K12 is intended to share ideas, advice, and suggestions. Teaching Learning Leading K12 is produced for educational purposes. Hey, thanks for listening. It would be awesome if you visited my website at stephenmiletto.com and connected with me, left a review, and listened to more episodes. And by the way, you could also share it with your friends, with your family, and your colleagues. Thanks so much. You're awesome.